This is the Wealth Standard Podcast, the gold standard in all things financial.
Okay, back for his second time, Daniel Ameduri. Daniel, do you believe it's been more than 2 years since we had you on? That kind of makes me somewhat depressed, man. We need to speak more often. Because I read your stuff and I'm kind of plugged into what you're doing, but we haven't spoken in two years, so or over 2 years. So Daniel, we'll link to that past podcast. I know you did an introduction of yourself then, but why don't you take maybe a moment and just familiarize people, especially the new people that are just listening over the last little bit, into who you are, what you do, and then we'll get into some intriguing things that we'll talk about today regarding the economy.
I've always been fascinated by investing, entrepreneurship. I've been an entrepreneur since very early on in my life. My main focus right now is futuremoneytrends.com. I also help oversee several other publications, Wealth Research Group, Crush the Street, Portfolio Global, and a new one we've recently launched called Permanent Wealth Partners. It's with Keith Neumeyer, very successful natural resource entrepreneur. And basically it's looking over his shoulder and investing what he invests in. So we're focused on personal finance, but we're trying to find that bridge or that middle ground. I think a lot like your own show, where I don't want to go all Peter Schiff on people and it's just buy gold and foreign currencies. And I also don't want to go Dave Ramsey on people where it's all, mutual funds and indexes and stuff. I'm looking for that realistic middle ground. And I also reflect on my own life, what worked for me. That's all I can share. And I like to share that with people, what worked for me, what worked for my wife and I. There was no easy way to wealth. There are great ways that I have learned from studying rich people. Of course, rich people have the biggest advantage of rich people is they're already rich. So they can make those 100-year decisions and short-term volatility in the stock market or something doesn't bother them. But anyway, so my main focus today is futuremoneytrends.com. Yeah,
and I subscribe to it, and I get the content that you're putting out there is awesome. And you started a podcast as well over the last little bit. Where are you at with your podcast?
I do an interview every week, and we interview people in the gold space, crypto space, personal finance space, and we're just looking for different ideas. We're looking for those people out there that might think differently. Maybe the guy who doesn't think that we're in a Goldilocks economy, or I like to flip it around and ask the guy who thinks that. I've talked to people recently who are like, look, you have no idea, what's going to happen under the Trump administration. They're going to unleash, the American spirit like you've never seen it before, and Dow's going to go to 50,000. So I just like to talk to different individuals who are out there, being bold.
No, and I love that about you because I feel the same way, and it's. I think that people, they kind of grab hold to a trend or not part on the pond, but grab hold to an idea and they close their mind to everything else. And I think that perspective, you are never going to get to the point where you're perfect, surprise, surprise. But it's one of those, there's so many people around you that look at the world differently, and seeing through their eyes, you have to actually look through their eyes, not through your lens and then their eyes. And that's why, with a Dave Ramsey, I've gotten so much from him recently regarding his leadership stuff. He has some really cool things that he's come out with some partnerships. Now, I don't really agree with him on the personal finance side on a lot of different things, but some of those leadership things are fascinating. But yet, if I was so closed-minded to him, then I wouldn't ever be open to what he has helped me realize in a few regards. And so I'm glad to hear that, because I think there's so much going on in the world right now that it's really impossible to go in and really understand everything. And so really being open-minded to other people's opinions and perspectives, it's really important. And go ahead.
Real quick, I know you probably don't want to talk a lot about Dave Ramsey, and I think you and I both speak highly or think highly of him. We disagree with him about whole life, but with that said, his advice on debt is really good. And what I've given this, because so many people, you're right, they just if they don't like Dave Ramsey about whole life, then they hate Dave Ramsey and don't like him on anything. Mm-hmm. But if you think about the audience that he's teaching, he's not trying to reach out to guys like you, guys like me, guys like the men and women on this audience. Mm-hmm. He's reaching out to people who are 100,000 plus in debt, to their eyeballs. They have horrible spending habits. And when you consider what the baby steps he's trying to give them, honestly, that's probably the best advice. Look, if somebody comes to me and says, I want to build wealth, I want to build long-term wealth, I'm going to tell them about whole life. I'm going to tell them about real estate, gold, and tell them about paying off their debts. But if my friend who I've known since high school comes to me and he, pulls up in debt to his eyeballs, driving a Maserati with no income, asks me for help, I'm not going to mention whole life or buying houses. I'm going to say, you know what, dude, you need to go and listen to Dave Ramsey for a month because you got to get your life straight before you even think about building wealth.
Yep. No, I think that's really where it's interesting. Recently I've been working on a book, and I've been doing lots of research on, different aspects of the economy and where people are with their money. And it's amazing just how prevalent one kind of singular strategy is, which is using, the stock market, using mutual funds, using government sponsored plans. And it's so massive. But what's even more massive is the mentality that it's created. And oftentimes, people will just gravitate towards something, not because it rationally makes sense, but because it's what everybody else is doing. And oftentimes that could lead to all sorts of different things, whether it's racism, whether it's Americanism, there's a lot that it can get very gnarly and destructive when you do get into this crowd mentality and don't think for yourself. But I think you're right. Yeah, it's one of those things where there's so much going on in our world today that is so exciting, but there's just as much that is really, I don't know, it's scary. And I got an email this week from someone about it was Jim Rickard's letter to the president. Have you seen that one? No. Oh man, it's kind of crazy. And I have a high regard for Jim Rickards and what he's done. But it's one of those things where his perspective on things is like, holy crap. But then there's other perspectives from Pierre Diamandis or those that are kind of looking ahead of the curve as far as technology is concerned. And there's so much there that would benefit the world. So that might be a good point with, where you're at in future money trends. What are some of the things you're paying attention to right now, whether it's, conferences that you've gone to or blogs that you're reading or topics that you're trying to learn about? Maybe let's kind of go there just so I see where your mindset is, and then we can kind of pick into that.
Well, we're always focused on personal finance and helping people just make prudent decisions. When it comes to investments, we're focused on three sectors right now. We're focused on the cannabis. We believe this is an end of prohibition moment. So we believe, but it's very early stage. It's very messy right now, but we believe that is a good place for people to position themselves. We also like the gold sector. Out of the 10 historical sectors of the S&P 500, it's the only one that is undervalued, not just gold, natural resources. And then we're also focused on the cryptocurrencies. I stumbled into this space because my video guy wanted to be paid in Bitcoin. So we were forced to learn about it and been to conferences. I actually just got back from a conference yesterday about the blockchain. Fascinating stuff. Yeah, I was blown away. I think Bitcoin was only mentioned once at the very intro of the conference. The rest of the speakers, engineers and scientists data scientists from Microsoft, ExxonMobil, Chevron, Halliburton, we're all focused on the blockchain and how that would change the business and how that was going to help save a lot of money and secure systems. So those are the three kind of exciting trends we're focused on. And then of course we focus on a lot of the normal stuff too, that, just focusing on whether you're buying a single family home or if you're just saving for the future or using whole life as a savings vehicle to compound your wealth, to basically, bank on yourself, as they say. So those are the kind of the bigger picture things we're focused on. And then if you want to get into, we can get into any one of them.
Yeah, let's go right down the line. So maybe let's talk about cannabis first. And I would first state that, I live in a very, religious type of community here in Utah. And there is this, stereotype to cannabis and marijuana. And it's a stereotype not based on rationale. It's based on history, and it's based on, social perspective and purview. And I look at, cannabis and what I've learned from a good friend of mine, Connor Boyack, who I've talked to you about before with Libertas Institute. It's one of those crazy things that back in the day, you had this story being told by the textile industry about hemp, and they spun it in a way that created this total negative stigma to marijuana and the byproducts of it. So maybe get into that. I mean, I would say right now it's a messy thing because a lot of states are approving it, but yet federally, it's still illegal. So it's one of those things where they can't use the banking system. They have to, transact in alternative currencies or cash. Yeah, it is. It's one of those like mysterious type of industries where I don't think people peer beyond the layer of the social stigma. So maybe address that briefly and then talk about like investments that are associated with that.
Sure. It's without a doubt, it's happening. It's unfolding all across Europe. Canada just legalized it. California will be the biggest player. This is 39 million people, and you've got about 250 million visitors to California annually. Compare that to Colorado, which has about 5 million residents and had, I think, up to 40 million visitors. Now they brought in over $100 million of tax revenues from the industry. Yep. And California, do the math. I mean, you're talking about an industry that's going to quickly become $1 billion, just in revenues for the state. Mm-hmm. It doesn't include jobs and all kinds of different government bureaucracies that I'm sure will spawn from this. But I don't think there's any turning back the clock. We had a prohibition on alcohol. Yeah. Coincidentally, when that ended, marijuana became illegal. And there's a lot of different things. If you listen to the history of marijuana, it is interesting. It did affect minorities only in the beginning. It was called cannabis, and then they specifically used the Mexican name of it to call it marijuana. So that was through that whole campaign called the Mary Jane campaign. Have you ever looked through that? It's like fascinating just to see how like totally far gone we've gone. As far as what people understand about it. Now, I'll tell you openly and honestly, I never tried marijuana as a teenager. And never, so and coming from, Southern California, it was definitely offered. And I never tried it in my 20s. Now, here I am in my mid-30s. I've got 3 children, happily married. And it was about 3 years ago, somebody offered me some to try one of these gummies. And I was like, well, what's the big deal? I proved I can say no to peer pressure in my teens and my 20s. Sure, let's try it. And I got to tell you, that's where my eyes really opened up about cannabis and the marijuana space. I tried the marijuana and I was blown away how it was just not that big of a deal. Mm-mm. Here I was told as a kid that this is, a dangerous drug. It's the gateway drug. It's going to hurt you. And, I'm not an advocate to try it or to do it, but I'm telling you, I'm a regular wine drinker. I drink wine every night with my wife. Mm-hmm. And I don't see the difference at this point. Mm-hmm. Now I've tried it probably 4 or 5 times. And honestly, I don't know what the difference is between having this 10 milligrams of THC in a gummy and the difference between having, a half a bottle to 3/4 a bottle of wine. So I would say the stigma around it is definitely inflated. And that's my opinion on personal use. Yep. My father-in-law just retired as a doctor in a major hospital in Southern California, and I asked him about it because I was curious. And he's a very conservative religious guy, and I always wanted to know what his thoughts were. And he says, I worked in the emergency room for many years, and he goes, and we would have 5 to 10 people come in from alcohol every few nights, especially on weekends. He goes, but in the 30 years that I was there at the hospital, we never had a single person come in for cannabis related, any injuries or hallucinations. He goes, it was always alcohol. So that 2 cents out there. Now, when it comes to the investment side of it, I can tell you this, it's so early, everybody, so early. I know the states are starting to legalize it, and we are so early in the stage. It is so dangerous. Most of these companies that are publicly traded, because that's the easiest vehicle that I would use, are scams. It's a very dangerous place to be right now for investments. There is no dominator. There isn't a go-to company that I can recommend to you. In fact, we have went over, probably, I don't know, upwards of 200 companies that are public. We do plan on making a few investments, but they're not even public yet. So some of the companies that are the most legitimate ones, they're not even going to be public until 2018. So I would just tell everybody, be very careful. These companies, like you had said, they can't even open up bank accounts because the banks have kicked them out because of the FDIC. They want to keep their FDIC insurance. Yep. It's just there's going to a lot of money is going to be made, but right now the only people who've made money are attorneys. So just be very careful invest in the marijuana space. And the guys themselves that are creating the facilities, right? They've done really well, but like you said, it's not in the traditional liquid fluid financial system. So it's very difficult to have a public company that, can actually transact in a way that's efficient. Anyway, we won't get into that, but yeah, I would say
with cannabis, what I've learned is that there are so many different uses to it. It's not just the personal use side of things, which from a libertarian perspective, it's really easy to argue that. And you look at examples of all the other substances that people can partake in, they're way more dangerous. It comes down to, just if you have values, you're going to, you may use it, you may not use it. It's just like, let you decide. Don't have some sort of, institution or government entity decide in that sense. But it's also, really, if you look at where we are with the drug wars and with everything that's going on there, it's like people are using it anyway. And it's totally a messed up system. This is a way in which, I would say it could solve multiple problems. But I would say in the end, the opportunity cost of not doing it because of the whole personal use thing is in all the byproducts that exist, whether it's, the medicinal uses of it, hemp use, and how that can be, really profound in the way in which textiles are made. There's so much opportunity cost there because of that kind of stupid rule that came about because of a smear campaign of the hemp industry. And I guess, and there's other reasons as well. But I would say, as far as that's concerned, you're right. I think that is definitely a sector in which could explode once there's kind of this federal tape that's cut. And it's only a matter of time. It's kind of like, the trains on the tracks. It's just getting faster and faster and faster. And even though the bridge isn't constructed, like it's going to be constructed. Right. Yeah. So anyway, so that's cool. Yeah, I would definitely, I don't follow that as much as far as the topic is concerned. So, but I have seen you comment on that a few times. Okay. So maybe let's get into, let's maybe go blockchain first. Cause I think blockchain is it's fascinating, but what's even more fascinating to me is just this, there's this like abstractness to it that nobody knows what it really is. And they just think it's another word for like, cryptocurrency. And it's not. And it's a fascinating technology that I think applies to any business that's going to be, gathering data and transacting, right? And as far as, his history, there's going to be historical transactions, but also just like the privacy side of things, and the compliance side of things. It's a fascinating system. So maybe give kind of some nuts and bolts of how blockchain works, maybe starting with like the difference between Bitcoin and blockchain.
The Bitcoin itself is a cryptocurrency, and that's pretty much what makes the news. That's what most people listening to this show are familiar with. The blockchain is the technology behind it. And what it does is it's the way I've heard it explained, it was on a TED Talk. It's the trust factor. So if you buy a home, you have third parties involved, multiple third parties, from the bank who's distributing a wire, to the other bank who's receiving the wire, to the escrow company who might be verifying that the house has clear title. There are a lot of third parties involved. What the blockchain does is it's self-verification. You're essentially relying on the computers, which are not hackable in the sense that you cannot hack the blockchain. If you want to hack the Department of Defense, you've got one place to go. You can hack it. If you want to hack the blockchain, there are tens of thousands of computers involved. You'd have to hack them all at the same time and change them all at the same time to be able to go in and change something in it. So that's where the blockchain will come involved. When NASDAQ is already doing trial runs. The Australian Frankfurt and Japanese stock exchanges, they're already testing. Yesterday, actually, when I was at a blockchain conference, the TMX was there. These are the people who are in charge of the Toronto Stock Exchange. So financial services, they're definitely going to use this because it's just an easier way to save money, reduce costs, have more security.
Yep.
We all saw this thing that happened with Equifax. Yesterday, I learned that JP Morgan during the housing crisis in 2008 was spending over $2.5 million a week trying to figure out who the hell owned all these mortgages that they were taking over from Bear Stearns. Literally.
Yeah.
And with the if that was inputted with the blockchain, it would be you'd be able to click something, open it up on the code, and it would show you everywhere this mortgage had been and who owned it.
The origination of it and the whole history behind it.
Yeah, it wouldn't be relying on a third-party business that could go bankrupt. It would just be open source on the internet. And there are both private blockchains, there are public blockchains, there are centralized blockchains like Ethereum, and there are decentralized ones like Bitcoin and Litecoin. So you can participate by owning the coins. You can participate in owning some of the businesses. Most of the businesses are private up until this point. FutureMoneyTrends.com is actually in the next week or two, we're going to be making a major announcement of we believe, the first legitimate blockchain company. It's
go public.
Many major funds, the founder of Lionsgate, Entertainment, and just some of the top people and some of the early adopters in the Bitcoin world. So, but again, I mean, and even that, we're going back to the fundamentals. These are the companies that actually produce and verify the blockchain. They call them mining companies, but they're not mining in the traditional sense. They're mining in the sense that they have massive warehouses with computers in them that are essentially verifying and the blockchain transactions and solving math problems. Just in the simplest term to explain it, and that is basically what holds it. That's why it's not hackable. They've had professional hackers come in, and what happens is they come in, turn around to be enthusiasts of the blockchain technology. So, by the way, there is Bitcoin and there is Ethereum, and that is speculative. I want to be very clear. We don't know what's going to happen to that. That could go to zero, or it could go to 100,000. I don't know. But one thing for sure that's not speculative is the blockchain
technology. No, and it's one of those you're hitting. I mean, if you look at what kind of compels us as human beings, right? You kind of go through the order of Maslow's hierarchy of needs or whatever, but then you get to a point where you just want to do more. It's efficiency. It's doing more with less, and it's optimizing resources. And you're totally right. It's like with how amazing our world is with regards to technology and communication, and what we've been able to come up with. It's just fascinating. But there is a lot of inefficiency. There's a lot of redundancy. There's a lot of waste. And it's insane. It's insane. And so if you look at what compels us as human beings, we try to solve problems. We try to make things easier. And that's where the blockchain technology fits in, because it honestly makes things a lot easier in, I would argue, almost every industry that sells something, which is basically every industry. And that being the case, it will transform the world. It'll make things so much more efficient. And really, obviously, businesses associated with it are important to know about, because I don't know if there's anybody that has a patent on blockchain. Do they?
I don't know. That's
any intellectual property on there?
It's open source. It's out there now, especially with Bitcoin. And one thing I was going to mention with blockchain is that the Department of Defense is now looking into using blockchain for secure communications. Yeah, because it has that unhackable factor.
Yep. No, and I think your mortgage thing, your like real estate thing, it's like the perfect example, and it applies to the insurance industry, it applies to banking, it applies to everything. But yeah, it's like going from how do you buy a house? Well, you have to have a mortgage broker, then you have to. Then they submit to one of multiple banks, and then the bank has all their processes, and they wire money to a title company, and they have all their processes, and then they give money back to you, and they give money back to this person. It's just such a freaking clunky system, but yet we've just conformed to industries being created around that. And that's what's really exciting, is that you can essentially combine a lot of different industries and just have their core service be a very simple process as opposed to this like complex, just super wasteful experience. So it's interesting. So yeah, we'll link. Why don't you send me the link to that YouTube video? And I have a couple things too that I've had, and we'll post those on the show notes so people can kind of get a better idea of blockchain. And I also say, yeah, if you want to look, I think you guys have a free part of your newsletter too, right? That you'll send, or an email list.
If you go to futuremoneytrends.com, subscribe. You get our weekly wealth digest. You'll also get the blockchain pick. And Sweet. Again, it's we do suggest Bitcoin and Ethereum as a speculation, clearly a speculation. Only put money in that you are willing to risk losing all of it. Mm-hmm. But we're focused more on investing in the blockchain because we see that as more sustainable long term.
Got it. Well, let's transition there as far as the Bitcoins and the Ethereum, because they're getting tons of publicity. And even recently, JP Morgan, Jamie Dimon, made all sorts of, comments on it, which totally probably propelled, the excitement of those that are kind of Bitcoin proponents. And it's really fascinating, but maybe let's transition to that and kind of, dovetail into gold or go back and forth, because, right now with our economy, as I said before, you have all sorts of exciting things that are going on. You have technology, you have, just, I don't know, you look at what we can do as far as communicating with people and knowing about one another. It's like whether it's Facebook or social media, how to communicate with people, whether it's business wise or personally. So many opportunities. I'm trying to get this person on the podcast that basically they have a specialty in consulting with a business to take a business completely virtual, right? Meaning they have, nobody has like an office. It's one of those, it has, people are spread throughout the country, and these are hundreds of people type of companies. I mean, you're going to have that's, coming into play in the future as well, where you don't have to necessarily like move to a certain city to work there. You'll be able to live wherever you want as long as you have a good internet connection. So anyway, it's like one of those things where it's so amazing. But I would also say that there's this fragile nature of our economy because of how it's based, and looking at how debt has really fueled the last 60, 70 years as far as, post World War II and what we've developed since then. Right now, I think that, there are a lot of consequences that could disrupt our economy, disrupt people's lives, disrupt businesses. So maybe let's kind of talk about that and get into, gold, and why is gold always this, like, it's always a topic of conversation when you're dealing with monetary policy or dealing with, historical things. And then, I would say let's see where, that goes as far as Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies, because it's not just Ethereum and Bitcoin. Those are like the two dominant ones, but there's like so many derivatives of that as far as other types of cryptocurrencies that are coming out, and a huge demand for it and international demand. So let's kind of get into that. Like, what are your thoughts are just kind of on the nature of our economy, like how things are going, like what's going on that you're trying to pay attention to that you think could be one of those like things that could cause one of those first dominoes to start, affecting all the other dominoes down the line.
It's technology versus government stupidity, I guess. But
seriously,
let me say something about the what Jamie Dimon said. First off, Jamie Dimon said Bitcoin was a scam basically when it was at $50. But here's what's funny: everybody will fully appreciate this. The main seed investor in Ethereum is JP Morgan.
I know. Is that insane?
The biggest competitor to Ethereum is Bitcoin. So, I mean, look, take it for what it's worth. The biggest competitor to Bitcoin trashed Bitcoin. Okay, I get it. And of all people, look, JP Morgan, they not only, received different bailout funds during the mortgage crisis, but this is a company that has been caught in many different type of trading manipulation scams and things. So I don't know if he and that company is the best one to be calling Bitcoin a scam. So,
or anything for that matter.
Yeah. So look, as far as I'm with you, man. I know exactly what you're getting at. With you look at if you just look at what's going on with the national debt and the obligations, when you consider that all of the income from the U.S. government, federal government, is spent on entitlements, which is Social Security and interest on the debt, and there's not a penny left over for the defense, there's not a penny left over to pay Congress, there's not a penny left for anything else. If you truly fully appreciate that all the money is going to just entitlements and interest, and everything else we do in life in the federal government is borrowed, you'll be in depression. You'll start preparing for the collapse in the end of the world. Now, on the flip side of it, if you see what's happening in Austin and Silicon Valley and other places all around the world, you can get very excited and become a wild-eyed optimist. And it's one of the reasons why, I look at stocks and I'm like, okay, they're very overvalued right now. Yeah, but so. What do we do about the S&P 500 type stocks? They're very overvalued. But at the same point in time, I'm torn because I look at the U.S. dollar and say, look, where is this going? So do I want to own a currency that could be devalued aggressively over the next 5 to 10 years? Or do I want to own Apple and Google and Coca-Cola? So, it's hard. We're always in unprecedented times. People say we're in unprecedented times right now. Well, every human has always been able to say that. Exactly. We're in unprecedented times. So, but yeah, looking at what's going on with the sovereigns, you just had Austria come out with a 100-year bond at 2.1%. You've got negative interest rates in 1/3 of the world, and you've got negative real yields in the United States, which is, the interest rates are lower, the yield is lower than the actual inflation rate. And the inflation rate can be argued with, by the way. And as you know, I know you've covered all this stuff with Andy and on your other shows. So, it could be even worse. And gold in that environment does well. Now, I advocate gold ownership as a hedge on basically everything that's out there when it comes to the central planners and the debt that the United States has and the world has. So I'm not a perma bear on the dollar. I'm not a perma bull on gold. I think gold cyclically right now is a good investment. I think gold stocks, very select ones, cyclically can be good investments. Although the mining sector historically is probably the worst investment you could make. I mean, if you dream of buying a Barrick Gold and having your wealth compound, I mean, it's really a bad plan. These stocks do not perform well at all over the long haul. They're very cyclical. If gold's not going to go up, they're not going up.
Yep.
So
yeah.
No, anyway, so basically, look, we advocate 5 to 10% ownership in gold. Right now I'd be on the higher end just because I think it's a very safe trade. But look, gold is gold. Gold is the end use. But silver I can get more excited about because silver has utility outside of being money. Gold really is just jewelry and money, which is fine. I'm not trashing gold. That's a great use. But for silver, I can get more excited about because it's in everything, and I think it's a good investment. But gold ownership, we're strong advocates of it right now cyclically. But in the bigger picture, owning gold is like having some cash or having some extra food in your house. It's I would look at it as insurance. I don't want gold to go up because if gold goes to 5,000 or 10,000 like some people predict, that's not good.
No, we have way bigger issues.
I don't want, if gold goes to $10,000, life's going to really suck, guys. No one should get excited about their gold going up to 10,000. Life is going to suck. Grapes at the grocery store, are going to be $50. It's going to be hard to buy things. There might be civil unrest. You don't want gold to go up, but gold is there and its purpose is there in case there is some sort of major financial reset or major crisis, that you have some wealth that is recognized. And I don't care what system we go into in the future, the gold will still have value. But with that said, I'm still very optimistic because of everything that's going on with technology.
Well, I think, and that's where I used kind of the domino effect, because it's kind of like, who knows what that domino is. But once it hits, you can't go back and try to pick that domino up again, right? The events are already going to go, everything's going to happen down the line. And that's where it's kind of like with the situation we're in. Yeah, if gold does do that and prices start to get super volatile, it's not going to last very long because things will go into chaos. That's why I say fragile, is because right now it's a debt-based society and it all revolves around interest rates, right? And it's an international economy. And that's why it's people, countries are pissed that we're raising the debt ceiling, which means now they're going to have to do the same thing, right? To keep kind of as close to parity as possible with exchange rates. And it's one of those, everybody's just continuing to do it. And, like you said, right now the government piles on $600-700 billion per year, right? More in debt than they had the previous year, because that's where the money they spend comes from. I mean, you can only go so far, and they're right there pushing those limits. And I don't know what the end game is going to be, because you're absolutely right. It's I think I don't know when I started to see this, but this is years ago when you have companies that were getting these $100 million valuations, and then $500 million. Then there's 3 that are just about 45 minutes from me. It's called Billionaires Row, right? Where it's they're worth $1 billion. And I'm like one of them does surveys. How are they worth $1 billion? And it had nothing to do with the money they were making, right? It had to do with just their list and their opportunity and, the need depending on the business and who their clients were. And then they get, these huge rounds of funding, even though they're not making hardly any money. And it's one of those those big companies have gotten bigger, right? Because of that kind of dynamic, being able to buy up other companies, being able to maximize market share. And it's just crazy because they're benefiting from it for sure. And they're able to take that money and innovate and invest here and try this and try that. So yeah, we're getting so much as far as technology and benefit from that point. But it's also like, okay, yeah, but there are consequences to that, because the debt that is fueling a lot of this has to be repaid, right? And it's one of those, who's going to pay it? Right now, we can't even afford the interest. How are we going to pay, Sure. How are we actually going to pay off the principal? So it's one of those, I don't know, it goes so far down into those kind of trails of logic that, it's very hard to really come up with an end game scenario as far as how things are going to flesh out.
And the whole world's interconnected. There's no country that's going to screw over another country, especially when you talk about the big ones. People are worried about China screwing over the U.S. or the U.S. screwing over China. It's not going to happen because they're interconnected. The U.S. needs China. China needs the U.S. And there's an idea out there that the emerging markets are going to take over and they're going to replace the United States and the West. Look, the fact of the matter is the emerging economies are all commodity dependent. You've got, average incomes, whether it's the Philippines or Costa Rica. I mean, it's in the $5,000 to $8,000 range, maybe, $15,000 in China. They're so far behind us. I mean, they're not even. It's ridiculous how many decades the other countries would be behind us for them to somehow, the United States goes third world and these countries go first world. Mm-hmm. I don't see that in the future. I see a lot of these doom forecasters talking about how it's going to, all happen and it's China's century. Look, you can say it's China's century, but let's be real. Everybody says we don't make anything, but yet Google, Amazon, Apple, Microsoft, IBM, biggest companies in the world. The biggest companies in the world of what? What is important to everybody right now? By the way, I don't show anybody my text messages. Anyway, look, the United States is a huge innovator for the world. Mm-hmm. And our technology products are going out. So yes, we do make stuff. We make technology. Maybe we don't make the TVs, mm-hmm. but our companies are making the TVs work better. They're making them more efficient. They're the technology behind those TVs. So, those manufacturing jobs are gone, and maybe some will come back, but we don't even need them to come back because if we are the technology giant. And honestly, do the math. That's the future. That's what's happening. The world is unfolding. We've gone in a parabolic move with innovation. We don't want to lose that. We want to keep pushing through.
All right. So I would say, I've been thinking about something lately, and this is where I really gravitate toward gold for a specific reason. And a couple years ago, I read the Jim Rickards book on the new case for gold, which I think the introduction to that has helped me clarify something just in my mind as far as the significance of that standard. Now, and this is where I've made some connections based on things I do with my business. And what has helped me tremendously, I would say, in my personal life without really associating it with gold or money in general. So, and this is what it is. So if you look at the how a country operates, or you look at how a business operates, right? Most successful ones, I'm not going to say all because I just don't know, but the ones I've seen that are the most successful do it because they have a standard set of values. And the reason is because it's not a person versus person. It's a person versus an ideal. It's a person versus a principle that's unchanging, right? And either honesty is this or it's that. But if we both agree with honesty, then when you're dishonest or you're dishonest, you don't have to fight about it. You know that you're right or you're wrong. So the idea behind a value or a principle is very similar to some of the principles of the Constitution, right? Or the principles of a religion, or like commandments. Like, you can't argue those. Either you agree with them or you don't, which is fine. But if you agree to them, it's very hard to say like, well, no, that's not this, or no, that's not that, right? You have a value or a standard in which you operate. And I can't remember who says the quote, but they said, if values are understood, decisions are easy. Okay. And it comes down to, it's not a person and their bias associated with the decision, right? It's the actual value itself and what is in alignment with that value and what isn't. So as I look at gold, or I look at, this type of standard, one of the arguments Rickards makes, which is just fascinating, is that on the periodic table, it is the only element that could be a standard like this, where it's acceptable everywhere and everybody agrees upon its elements. It agrees upon its principles. And if they do, okay, then you can't manipulate that. So if you look at a world international economy, okay, we all have different currency names, But in the end, it all represents the same thing, which is a value of labor, a value of goods, a value of services. Okay. When you have some sort of standard or value like gold, now you can have people interact with one another. But right now that doesn't exist. Yeah. Okay. And that's the reason why you have, so much debt associated with Japan. Like the Bank of Japan is like a train wreck if you really look at their balance sheet. But you look at the US, then you look at China, and you look at what everybody is doing around the world just to kind of create that standard of value. And it's going to be impossible unless you have a medium that everybody agrees on. And that does not exist right now. And so I look at, what the future holds, and it's going to have to come home to roost. That doesn't mean that, my services aren't going to be valuable, your services aren't going to be valuable. That doesn't matter really. What matters in the end is that it's basically measured. That value is measured by something that is identical. And that's where I really see things going. I don't know though. I could be totally wrong. But in the end, I would say that, like you mentioned, no country wants like the other country to go away in theory. We're all like business, and we all have experienced life, and we want to be happy and do this and do that. It's like one of those things where we all have very common interests in the end. Having this standard of value, I think, is what everyone's going to gravitate toward. Gold has been it in the past. There's a huge argument for it right now, and I think it's always going to play a role in the future. And that's just me and what I've learned over the years. But I'll give you kind of a final word on that and what you do to track gold, what you're looking at. And then we'll go ahead and wrap things up.
Well, what you just said, though, it's interesting. I just thought of something. Gold has been the enemy of the central banks for some time, and if there was a alternative currency like a cryptocurrency that became a threat to the central banks, it's interesting. The central banks could go back to gold and make it their strongest ally. Mm-hmm. Because having some sort of currency backed by gold or a portion of gold, which I don't really see happening, but if it did happen, that would be a strong alternative to a private cryptocurrency that was taking over the world in the central bank's world, at least. Anyway, what do we do to track gold and silver? We focus on when it comes to the actual mining shares, we focus on the people. Again, these are very risky investments. And for gold and silver, I'm a big fan of Jim Rickards. I know you like him as well. He by the way, he hates cryptocurrencies.
I know.
And I don't do anything specific other than hold some and not think about it. And I'm probably like most of the listeners, unless it makes headlines. I'm not a person that follows the daily price of gold. If it's down a lot or up a lot, I'll probably know about it. And if it's down a lot, I'll buy some more. And that's a good idea. If anybody's watching this, if you see something move down sharply and you want to own it, that's the day to buy it. If you see it up, just leave it alone because you're probably about to lose money.
Well, in the end, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where, yeah, we as humans, we don't know everything. We're just trying to kind of figure things out as they happen. And in the end, there's a lot of commonalities. There's still stuff that we have no clue about. And it's in the end, I look at, really, and this is the financial advice I try to give everyone. It's not necessarily product driven, but it's you driven. And it comes down to you. If you can figure out a way to be valuable, doesn't matter what that value is backed by, right? You'll still be able to go on vacation, feed your family, do cool things. And in the end, that's where we have the most control. All this other stuff, we don't have much control over. We can speculate. There's all sorts of conjecture. But in the end, it's one of those things where I think it's a cool time to be alive, right? Unprecedented times, right? It's one of those, in the end, what do you have control over? Where's the most wealth always created? And it's always based on you and a person, not based on a thing. And I think you agree with a lot of that sentiment. But I really love how you've written about certain things and what you've done with your business. It's awesome to hear about. And we have to do this again before 2 years. It'll be 2019 in 2 years.
I always say my favorite stock symbol is YOU. It's that person looking at you in the mirror. That's where your income is going to come from. It's so funny. People love to reallocate, but if you just look in the mirror, that's where most of your money comes from.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's amazing. It's like the best return is you figure out how to make more money. That's the best return. You have to invest that. You may have to invest some, but it's more of like, if you try to just think about it, you're going to make more money. Yeah. Anyway, I think it's always fun to have that type of theoretical discussion. But anyway, Daniel, it was awesome to have you on, man. Thank you so much for your support. And it's been such a pleasure. We'll link to everything that we mentioned here so that people can get a hold of you and subscribe to you. I know you're on all the social media channels as well as your podcast. But again, really appreciate you being on, and we'll have to get you on a lot sooner than 2 years.
Thanks very much, Patrick. You have a good one.
You too.
You've been listening to the Wealth Standard Podcast, the gold standard in all things financial.